Good morning. Just trying to think about where I should start. There's something that has a great power in our lives, and probably greater than we can imagine. And that's the words we use, our speech. What are words? Words are concepts that have, characteristics, emotions that are connected to them. They're it's because connected to different concepts are their relative emotions, ones that we're aware of and some that we're not aware of at all. Of memories linked to that word. So it's a concept. It has characteristics. It has a function. A concept has the characteristics that in this totality it works. And to this concept there are emotions are connected, other concepts are connected to it, and what happens often is that we use a certain word to say something that instead it corresponds to just a part of that concept, but not to the entirety of that concept. And so what this brings So what happens is we attribute things to that situation, to that concept that don't belong to it. This is not what I wanted to talk about today. What I want to talk about is that words have a great power in our lives, even if we're not aware of it. But it's important for us sometimes to look at the words that we do use. And there's, for example, in the Karma Yoga, often in Karma Yogas they use the words. Sometimes it's right, sometimes part of it is wrong. But when it's just a part of it is right and a part is wrong, then it's wrong, because that wrong part is still attributed to the situation, and the word is work. Because what is work? If we needed to define the meaning of the word work, from my point of view, in the context in which we grew up, in the society in which we live, work has a characteristic, and that's the exchange. I give my time, my physical resource, my knowledge for something in exchange. And in exchange, I receive material resources to be able to live. This is a very clear concept related to the word work. And each one of us has his own relationship with this word work, his own experiences and memories. Something else is the concept of karma yoga, where one is not using his own time and resources to receive something in exchange, but instead to be part of something bigger than himself. These are two very different concepts. Within this concept, both words have an aspect of doing something physically, of using one's resources to go there, to do the action. In other words, what we call working. But there's a really big difference between working and karma yogiing. I mean, they're two different things. But the word that I wanted to talk about today is another one. It's fear. One of the difficulties, one difficulty in translations, in text, in everything, so, for example, here from like Tibetan to Italian, Portuguese, or English, whatever, very often what happens is the meaning of that word is different from the translated word in the given language, because the word fear is an emotion, it's a feeling that we can have that has a double connotation depending on the where you are. In many teachings, for example, fear is something very important, and could even be fundamental. It's the basis of taking of refuge and the basis of renunciation. It's at the basis of our path is fear, not understood as anxiety or insecurity, but fear understood as the awareness that something can generate suffering. Call it a healthy fear. Unfortunately, we use the same word, it's all fear. Even in Tibetan, it's jippa, it's the same, it's the same word. But Tibetan language, in who knows Tibetan is used to many different meanings given to the same word. For example, if you take a word, if you look in the dictionary, if you look in the dictionary, if you look up a word in the dictionary in Tibetan, like one word could have like 5 different contradictory meanings because the context is fundamental. But what's important is, I've had my past experience, and I see that when I touch with my own hand something that is burning hot, it's going to hurt, and I don't want to suffer. It's because our deepest suffering is our deepest fear is the fear of suffering, and the fear at the basis is that we don't want to suffer. That's at the basis of fear. And when we connect a situation or something with suffering, and we don't want to suffer, we want to avoid that thing. So I'm afraid of touching fire. Why am I afraid of touching fire? Because I've touched fire in the past, I burned myself, I hurt myself, and so if I see fire, I don't want to put my hand in the fire because I know it would hurt. Having this awareness, or we could call it a healthy fear, it's something that could hurt me. So it's right to have awareness of that. So I need to, so that I can protect myself. What do I know? Let's take any example. I see the other day we had that really, really strong rain here and very strong wind here in Albagnano, and above the temple, the rain gutters. The rain gutters were all filled with leaves, So we said, okay, well, we need to get up and clean, but to clean them, we need to hook onto the life-saving lines that are on top of the roof, because you see that it could be dangerous. You see that there's a kind of concrete danger, something that could happen. So it's right to prepare yourself and try to avoid the danger. So in that sense, that kind of fear is healthy, understood as like the awareness of dangers, awareness of possible sufferings. This one should try to avoid those things. So, but very often the word fear is used not in the context of emotions, of anxiety and suffering, but awareness of wanting to avoid something because that something could generate suffering. This is healthy fear. For example, in the practice of Tara, where we talk about the 8 fears, it says, in reality, what is the fear that we should have? If we are afraid of what generates suffering, then we should be afraid of anger, of jealousy, of anxiety and envy, of unlimited attachment, fear of erroneous views, and fear of ignorance and arrogance. This should make us afraid because this generates suffering. But there's another aspect, which is the fear that leaves a person blocked, that brings an inner state of anxiety. And that comes very often when we recognize a danger, we recognize something to avoid, something that we don't want to happen, and we don't see the possibility of avoiding it. We don't have the resources to avoid it, and we stay into a state of uncertainty. That uncertainty is what mostly generates the suffering. Among the mental defilements, for example, fear is not a mental it's not one of the main mental defilements, but uncertainty is. That is considered a mental defilement. That state where, oh, maybe this is going to happen, maybe it's going to be like this. Well, how is it going to be? This state of anxiety, of uncertainty, is something that effectively makes us suffer. The awareness that something can generate suffering and wanting to avoid it before it happens is a healthy feeling, depending, of course, what we're projecting it on. The problem is that after, very often, it's lived with anxiety or strong inner uncertainty. We can be afraid of many things. We can have this uncertainty related to many things, and one thing that's difficult when we talk about fear, fear understood as insecurity and anxiety, different from other mental defilements like anger or arrogance or attachment. They have a logical, let's say, a logic that is a little easier to understand. And instead, this inner state of fear that normally it's difficult to find a logical base. I mean, it exists, but it's difficult to say, why am I so afraid of this? That's not a conceptual, it's a conceptual path that we can go back and find the origin. But these fears normally come from our past experiences, not understandings or knowledge. Same thing with anger, but the more subtle fear is very deep. if when we have a strong fear and we try to understand why, surely it has to do with something from the past. Often, we're afraid that something is going to happen to someone, but maybe the fear that we have is the fear of abandonment, the fear of being alone. I mean, other feelings that maybe we've lived in the past that we absolutely don't want to relive. So we project that feeling on that inner state on to something else that we just don't want to happen. So not wanting something bad to happen is good, but the problem is staying in that state of anxiety or suffering. So let's remember that all our mental defilements or states of suffering are always a reflection of something that is inside of us. There is an external reality. I'm not saying that there isn't, but we see it that in this way because of a reflection of something inside of us. So it's not that I'm afraid because that thing is. No, there's a whole, we have to consider all our past experiences, everything, our inner views, etc. But we can do a couple of, because fear doesn't have a very simple logic to understand. The antidotes are not very obvious either. And I think we need to do a deeper work, maybe to look at different types of fear to find the different types of antidotes. But generally speaking, there's an attitude that I think works quite well. But as I said before, it's not going to work absolutely for everyone. In fear, one component is that we have an image of the future, and we live that image of the future with anxiety. We don't want that to become reality. And up to here, I imagine a certain future. I don't want that thing to happen. What do I need to do? I need to take care of the present, to do things well so that that negative future doesn't happen. I'm driving in a car. I don't want to have an accident. I go slowly. I use my brakes. I do what I need to do to not have that negative result of having an accident. But sometimes what happens is we imagine a future and we feel as if that's a certainty, as if we didn't have any power over the situation. And regardless of all the reasonings, we tell ourselves it's not like this, but that tiny doubt that it could happen is enough to overwhelm us with fear. And when you're in that state, and you try to get into this inner dialogue of, it's not like this, it's going to be fine, that's just not going to work, to try to convince yourself with an inner dialogue. But it doesn't work because in our inner dialogue we say, okay, everything's going to be fine. But what about the other times where it didn't go well? It could go badly, It's not. Who's to say that it's going to go well? And in that case, we try often to we try to find a certainty of what's going to happen. We try to grasp on to something more solid. Maybe we go talk to someone we trust, or we look to situations We look for someone to tell us that it will be fine. I'll tell you how I do it personally, how it works for me. In reality, when we imagine our future, we have no real instrument to be able to define and decide what is going to happen, see what is going to happen, what's not going to happen. For myself, I see that my own intuition works quite well. I don't know exactly how to explain that, but up to today, my intuition works well. But there's a point that makes us relax a little bit. That is the certainty of the uncertainty, because in the certainty of uncertainty, whether it's going to go well, it's going to go well, it's not going to go well, it's going to go maybe not well or maybe well, everything has the same weight, and so we're not in front of thousands. So then you're just in front of just thousands and thousands of possibilities. So maybe you'll slip. Maybe you'll slip and hit your head, or maybe you'll live to be, you'll live to be 250 years old because science is going to invent something, or maybe this is going to happen, maybe that happens. I mean, we don't know. Every time that we have a hypothesis of the future, it is only one among of almost infinite possibilities. But when we choose one, it's as if it were going to happen, and that weighs on us tremendously. But there are no results without causes, and we don't live in a reality that's predetermined. We live in an interdependent reality. This is enormous difference between these two. So the certainty of uncertainty brings us to put our energy into not in the future of what we want and what we don't want, but in the resources that we actually possess today. It's happened many times that I've spoken to people who have just been diagnosed with very serious sicknesses, and there's no certainty. Maybe it was like a pre-diagnosis where, and where someone says you have a high probability of a tumor, then this is fear and anxiety and fits of crying, or go to someone who who's been told by a doctor you may have a tumor. You can't tell the person, okay, nothing's going to happen. There's nothing wrong. I mean, how do you know? Even if that possibility is there, how can you say that it's going to be fine? So, what I do is, we don't know what's going to happen. We observe our own intuition, and we need to have a clean mind, a mind clean of paranoia and fear. Otherwise, the intuition is not. You can't read it. But the point is that things happen. As things happen, we have the resources to face them, no matter what happens. When we can have that, where we say, I don't know what is going to happen, if I'm going to get sick, if I'm not going to get sick. But what I do know is I have the resources to face whatever happens. And when we come back to our present moment, we say, I have resources and I need to cultivate these resources. This gives us a certain stability, because what increases our fear is this inner dialogue where we try to convince on one side or now, okay, why and here and there, and that does nothing other than increase the anxiety and uncertainty. And what quiets the dialogue is that neither one or the other is correct. They're both wrong, because no one knows what is going to happen. Is it the mind that says it's going to happen or the mind that says it doesn't going to happen? Neither one is right, because we don't know. The reality is that the future is unsure, and with the certainty of uncertainty, we can relax. I don't know if that's clear, because anything that we imagine is nothing other than our imagination. Once I heard someone say, we spend a lot of time of our life in the past and the future, and what you're imagining in the future is like a film. So it's up to you if you want to make a horror movie or a comedy or a drama, because it's just a movie that we're making. Because what's really going to happen, we don't know, and it depends on so many factors that go beyond our ability to manage. There's something that can help us, is that when we look at our past, for example, maybe things happen that we didn't want, or difficult times, but afterwards maybe we were able, we saw that we were able to manage the situation. Sure. If we see, we spend a lot more time pre-suffering than actually suffering, even when these things happen. So it's very important to try to find a moment of stability, to diminish this inner dialogue. And to diminish this inner dialogue is just to say that they're both wrong. Because future is uncertain, and this is a certainty. In Tibetan, there's a verse from a sutra of Buddha that says, from Abhidharma Kosha, the future, Maomba, Orime, that the future has no order. Can't say that this is going to happen and then this other thing is going to happen. Nobody can define that, because why? Because people, the beings who live, because beings have awareness and they can make choices, etc. So nobody can say how it's all going to come together. So what actually happens is not that important, but how we face the situation is. When the fear arises, if we're able to, relax, say, I really don't know what's going to happen. And what's more important, what actually happens is not as important as how I face this situation. So today I need to cultivate, love and gratitude and stability and joy, because these are the resources that are going to help me face whatever happens. It doesn't matter, the what and the how. I know this is not easy because we're made up of habits, and we're used to just entering into these infinite inner dialogues. And very often, these inner dialogues are based on a contradiction on what we think and what we feel. Something important in this is that sometimes these dialogues should be followed, but most often not. Very often not. At a certain point, it could be like this inner dialogue could be like at a certain point, like a radio that's just playing far away, So instead of like someone talking directly to you, to whom you should give your full attention. So we relax in the uncertainty. The certainty of the uncertainty. If I'm able to face, what I find in my present, then I'll be fine. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen, and we don't have total control of what is going to happen. So we should relax, but when we can cultivate our resources, we can create causes, So for example, I don't want to get sick. Is there anyone here that wants to get sick? I'd say no. So if I don't want to get sick, there are others, others who have more experience than me, who can tell me what the causes of sickness are. The causes of sickness are the lifestyle, how we eat, where we live, our environment, our emotions influence as well. Or infectious sicknesses like bacteria or virus. These are the causes of sickness. In this present moment, we're living this moment of coronavirus. So there are things that we need to do to protect ourselves. We need to do this. But if we look if we look, there are other sicknesses that are much more dangerous. We're living in a total epidemic of cancer, for example. Cancer mostly comes from a poor lifestyle. So if I don't want to get sick, then I need to be careful about what I eat, how I live. I need to take care of different areas of my life, not with anxiety or fear, but with the awareness of avoiding certain things so that I can cultivate the result that I want of not getting sick. In this period of epidemic, we should wear a mask. We should avoid hugging and touching and shaking hands. And somebody said, "Well, I don't know if that all works." I don't know either. But these are the resources that we have, so let's just use them in the best way that we can. And what then is what's going to happen? We don't know. So it's useless to say, just to go round and round and round. What's going to happen and what will it be? Let's prepare ourselves. Let's use the resources that we have, and it will pass. Let's just remember as well. Let me say again, it doesn't matter what happens, but how we face the situation. And we have the great fortune to have a greater objective that adapts to every situation, which is the practice of Dharma. In other words, it be the cultivating of our inner qualities. The Lojong practice, for example. Lojong is mind training. We can practice whether we're healthy or sick. The practice of Tonglen, we can practice if we're healthy or sick. Every context. What I saw, for example, in 1959, when the Dalai Lama, together with many masters, they left Tibet. I mean, many of my teachers left Tibet in conditions that are just that we can't even imagine. But I mean, how did they all get through that? And that they got through it because their objective was much higher, and it was practicing the Dharma. So even on a mundane point of view, external point of view, there was an enormous state of uncertainty, and there was destruction, just absolutely overwhelming experience of the time. But they had inner stability. When our inner path of Dharma has a greater weight than what happens outside, because what happens outside, it just can be used then and no matter what happens, we are serving our objective, our greater objective. So remember that we are born alone, we live alone, and we are going to die alone. No one can live our life for us, but we interact. So we can give a lot, we can receive a lot, and it's beautiful to interact among us, but our resources need to be cultivated and faced with and what happens should be faced with serenity, because we can't fight against the future. We can prepare ourselves for the future by living our present with awareness. So, just in conclusion, let's be careful with the words we use. Sometimes we say, "Oh, I'm afraid," but before giving a name, what am I feeling really? Okay, I have awareness of that dangerous thing. Okay, that part of awareness is great. That's good. So let's put energy in preventing that. But I have the anxiety. That something is going to happen. So okay, let's apply this antidote of the certainty of uncertainty, and also look at the certainty of the resources that we have. Because I have my own theory that goes beyond this, and I don't want to open this up now because in 15 minutes I need to be in Gravellona, which is about 45 minutes from here. So suffering is not. It doesn't come from the context, but it comes from this karmic cycle of mental defilements and karma. So in one way or another, we do suffer. One tries to change here, add here, take away here, but suffering. The suffering is there because this cycle of suffering is already moving. I've seen this with many people. It's like someone is experiencing a certain amount of pain, and then adds like worse situations, but the suffering doesn't go up, but it just changes the object. When one stops suffering for one thing and suffers for the next. It's almost as if the person has a certain amount of suffering to live in that moment. It's not like the more things I add, the more suffering I'm going to have. Sometimes maybe a little bit, but often no. But what I mean to say is that what we should be afraid of is our karma. We should be afraid of our mental defilements. And if I'm afraid of my karma, then I'm going to act in the present moment or with awareness. I'm not going to act with aggression or negatively. I'm not going to act with arrogance or with envy. I take care of my actions to take generous actions, because what generates suffering is my own karmic force and my mental defilements. So that's what I need to avoid and be afraid of, because if I'm aware in my present with the resources I have, then I'll be able to face any situation. So let's observe words well. Before we give a name to something, let's reflect. Is it really that, or is it just is it a part of it like that and a part not? And then after, let's try to find this serenity in the certainty of uncertainty, because the certainty of uncertainty in reality, it can help us find this balance, this stability, and we find the certainty of interdependence, the causes that one creates and how one interacts. And this is the key for the results.
Yanda lama dang rame cheki pela longche chin sadang lamge yunten rabzo ne dorje change koba nyurtob shua nimo dele tsendele nime kunyan delek shin ninsen takto delek pe kuncho sumke jingi lo kuncho sumke ngodrup tsol kuncho sumke trashi shon. All'alba o al tramonto, di notte o durante il giorno, possano i tre gioielli concederci le loro benedizioni, possano aiutarci ad ottenere tutte le realizzazioni e cospargere il sentiero della nostra vita con molti segni di buon auspicio. Buona giornata a tutti.